Hey folks, Clint Powell here. This is During the Break. Let's do this. Three, two, one. Before I introduce you, can you hear me?
I can.
We did it. Good job, man.
There we go.
All right, dude. I apologize. Thanks for your persistence, man.
No problem. Glad it worked out.
Yep. So now I'll do the intro. I didn't want to do the big intro and then pull you up and nobody be able to hear you. Hodgen Mainda. I said the name right?
You did.
There we go. You're the Chief Strategy Officer for Paladin Freight, and there's a longer name. I'll let you tell everybody what that is in a second. But we've done this video twice. I tried to start it about 10 minutes ago. I pulled it off. But I want to tell everybody, I think I've been in the same room with you a couple of times at networking events over the last 10 or 12 years. But the first time you and I met, you were much younger and I was much younger. And it was probably in the early 2000s when I was on the Chattanooga rugby team. We came to Nashville. There's a huge tournament. I don't know if they still have it, Nash Bash. And you were playing for the Nashville team. Do they still have it?
They still have it. Yep.
Is it still a big tournament?
It's still big, but not as big as how it was 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, it was fun. Rugby was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a great time. I miss it.
I miss it too. I'll be 54 my next birthday. I didn't find rugby till I was 30, and I played about 4 years. And dude, I told somebody if I'd have found it when I was 18 or 20, I would have. I understand how you play it for. I've got guys out there now that I go see that are still out there in their 50s and 60s playing old boys rugby.
That still play, yeah.
Have you ever thought of going back out?
Every time I think about going back out, I remember the last time I tried, I pulled my hammy. And I hadn't played in quite a few years, but I went to Nash Bash, actually. This was back maybe 8-9 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. I had not played in quite a while. And 5 minutes into the game, I pulled my hammy. And that was the last time that I played.
Yeah. Well, you can feel the same, but your body doesn't always react the same. Like I said, I'm almost 54. And probably about 10 years ago, I used to keep baseball glove, baseball, football, basketball, cleats, all this stuff in the trunk, right? Because you never know when you're going to run into somebody that wants to play something.
You're right. Yeah.
So I eventually just took all that crap out of my trunk so I wouldn't be tempted to pull a hammy like you did, man.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to dive back into rugby in a minute because I want to talk about the position you played and stuff. But before we do that, you are from Kenya originally, correct?
Yep. Born and raised Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay. So how old were you when you came to the United States, and was Chattanooga your first stop? Is that where you wanted to come? Tell everybody where you came from exactly, how about that region, and then how you got here.
Yeah. So great question, Clint. And thanks for having me on today. Not many people know this story. They came to the United States, played rugby at MTSU, but there's a time between coming to the United States and when I played rugby at MTSU that I was in Chattanooga for about a year. I moved to the United States in 97 at the age of 18. The reason I ended up in the U.S. Was because back in the late 60s and 70s, my dad was educated in the U.S. through an exchange program between the Kenyan government and the U.S. government. He had to go back upon graduating because it was a program you learn from the U.S. and take what you learn to help your native country. So he was able to really get working really quickly. So the value of a U.S. education. We have 5 kids. All 5 of us did not have a choice. Upon graduating high school, we were coming to the United States. We didn't have a choice. So we grew up knowing that at 18, whenever we graduated high school, we were coming here. I ended up in Chattanooga because my late grandpa, was a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. A lot of people don't know this story. So because of his years of service and ministry, I was able to get a scholarship at Southern Adventist University. And so I was one of 5, and obviously exchanging the Kenya shilling to the US, you're doubling the exchange, and so it was pretty expensive for my parents. So we were looking for ways to make it less financially strenuous. And thankfully, to my grandpa in his service, ministering, I was able to get a scholarship at Southern Adventist. And that's how I ended up in Chattanooga. I was at Southern Adventist for a year. I had the itch to continue playing rugby and tried to figure out where I could start playing. I met a few guys at Chattanooga Rugby Club, as you know. Great friends, Eric Buchanan, one of my dear friends, one of my first employers here in the States. And that introduced me to kind of the rugby fraternity. And then I met guys from MTSU, and one thing led to another. And I transferred from Southern Adventist to MTSU in '98.
So when you went to Nashville, there was a guy that played on the Nashville team named Chris McIsaac. Did you know Chris McIsaac? Have you ever heard of that name?
Name is familiar. I cannot picture Chris.
Well, the reason I bring him up is he graduated high school with me here in East Ridge and moved to Nashville and ended up playing for the Nashville team for a number of years. But did you when you came from Kenya to the United States, do you remember those first few months? Was there a culture shock? Because I hate to say this, we only know about other countries. And Americans can be very self-centered, like the world revolves around us. So what we know of other countries is only what we see. Where you came from, describe growing up there a little bit. And then was there a culture shock when you came here? Was it like, oh my goodness?
Yeah. That's a great question. So for those who do not know, Kenya is a developing country. It was third world, and over the last kind of decade transitioned into a developing country. What that means is you've got your urban areas like downtown Chattanooga, downtown Nashville, or Atlanta. Atlanta is as big as Nairobi. As urban, cars, shopping malls, restaurants. But 10 minutes outside of the urban areas, you'll see the dive. The big difference between those who are doing fine economically and those who are not doing well economically. It's a great difference. It's a big difference, actually. So, and that's the difference between the U.S., which has a bigger population of the middle class. Kenya does not have a big population of the middle class. So the urban areas are urban, but then as soon as you get out of the downtown, you quickly see the difference. And the best way to say it is the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. We were really fortunate. My mom and dad really worked hard to provide us a great education, a great upbringing. Came to the United States, though born and raised in Nairobi, which is as big as Atlanta, there's still big-time cultural differences.
Yeah.
Kenya was colonized by the British, so still the driving system in Kenya, eating, the type of foods, though we have our own culture, there's still a big British influence with the way Kenya is and the way people live. So I'd never been to the United States when I moved here in '97. I'll never forget this, Clint. The drive from my parents' home to the airport, my dad gives me an envelope with $2,000. And he says, son, I hope this is the only money that we are going to give you. He goes, I've been to the States. You're going to get a job. It's either going to be on campus, off campus. Hopefully you will be able to at least take care of yourself. We will, pay your tuition, but everything else outside of tuition is on you. I thought $2,000 was a lot of money. So I come to the United States. I'll never forget Mrs. Brown from Southern Adventist. She picks me up from the airport. I had never met her. We had emailed back and forth, talked on the phone, but she picked me up from the airport, hopped on a van, drove to campus, got settled in my dorm. Following week was kind of, getting to know campus and meeting other students. But I had $2,000, Clint, and I thought $2,000 would take me I had no idea what I was thinking.
Right.
I burned through that cash in probably a month. And I quickly had to get a job. My first job actually in the States was landscaping. And so worked on landscaping, on campus. And, the first 6 months, I will say, even the grocery stores, the way folks drive. In Kenya, they drive on the opposite side of the road. The food. We grew up speaking English, so at least I could communicate. That was easy. but everything else was just different. That's the best way to describe it.
It's a lot
But
louder.
honestly,
It's a lot louder here, isn't it? I mean, we move at a different pace, or did the pace not bother you?
no, the pace is actually folks in the United States move really quickly.
Yeah.
Something that I was not accustomed to. Obviously, now having lived here for 25 years, I'm accustomed to it. But it took a while to really get settled. And culturally, I mean, 6 months was getting comfortable, but I'll probably say it took probably a good 2 years.
Yeah. Have you been back home?
Yeah. So go home. There for a while, it was every year. I'm now married. Amber, my wife, is from the United States. She's from Wisconsin. We've got 2 beautiful kids, Addie and Ellis, 7 and 5-year-old. So we alternate Christmases. So 1 year we're in Wisconsin for Christmas. So think about single digits or in the negatives, cold, snow. And then the following year we're in Kenya in our shorts and t-shirt.
It's probably 90 degrees, 100
Yeah,
degrees.
80, 90s and beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got used to cold weather at all, or does it still suck? You're still like, I don't like cold.
Yeah, at the beginning, like the beginning of the cold weather, yeah, it still sucks, for lack of better terms. But I'm used to it now, especially whenever we visit my wife's family in Wisconsin. I mean, it's nothing like we experience down here. So yeah, I am now used to it.
Well, let's do this. Because I'm not going to keep you long because you're getting ready to get your day started. I do want to talk a few minutes more about rugby. Then we're going to talk some business stuff. But
Sure.
What position did you play in rugby?
So I played winger and fullback. And those who have not played rugby, obviously, Clint, you know.
Yeah.
The best way I describe it is if you've watched American football, a winger is very similar to the wide receiver.
Yep.
In rugby, the folks, kind of like the linemen in football, that's the scrum. They get the ball, they get the guys, the wingers or the wide receivers a clean ball, and we are the folks who've got the speed. And so I played winger and fullback. Fullback is not fullback American football fullback. It's very similar to the winger, but you field the ball at the back and you try and run it in.
Well, and you're also on the defensive side. A lot of times you're the guy that's when we fail, because I played inside center. And a lot of times when we haven't tackled like we're supposed to, we're hoping that the guy behind us, the fullback, a lot of times
is there. Yeah,
there.
You're the last man.
We used to have a guy named Matt Wallers that played. He was our fullback for most of the part. And dude, he was a good combination of speed and stocky. So when he did come through full tilt, he was a handful, man. I used to love I miss rugby. When did you find it? Was it coming to the United States or did you find it in Kenya?
I found it in Kenya. So I played rugby since I was, good Lord, middle school.
Really?
So maybe 11, 12 is when I started. And then back then it was very similar to football here, touch football or flag football. Mm-hmm. And then high school got serious, made the Kenya national high school team, the under 18. And then came to the US. Of course, Southern Adventist did not have rugby. They had soccer, which I enjoyed playing, but not as much as rugby. But was fortunate to find MTSU and played at MTSU. Then when I left MTSU, played for Nashville Rugby. And then I tore my second ACL, Clint. Don't know whether you know this, but I was trying out for the US Sevens team.
No.
Yeah, when I tore my second ACL, and that was the end of my rugby career.
That's heartbreaking, dude. That's one of those moments you're like, oh, man.
Yeah.
So when you came to the United States, though, and you started playing rugby here, rugby and soccer and lacrosse, when I grew up, it was football, baseball, and basketball. And maybe, so it wasn't that big here. And over the last 15, 20 years, especially soccer, but now lacrosse and rugby are getting more popular. But when you came here with your experience, you had so much more experience probably than the other guys you were playing with. Was there a little bit of like, I've got to go back and did you find yourself being a teacher more than a player?
Yeah. So at MTSU, being on the team there, we had to have X amount. It wasn't mandatory, but we were encouraged to do so. Everyone on the team did it. So on our squad, I was the only guy from Kenya. So you may know this, but playing at MTSU, we had a 22-man roster. Out of the 22-man roster, you were allowed to have 7 international players. So I was the only Kenyan. There were 3 or 4 South Africans. There were 3 South Africans, Kenyan, 3 South Africans, 1 guy from Brazil, my former roommate, and then a guy from New Zealand and a guy from England. And then the rest were obviously from the United States. So we found, we were a pretty diverse squad, 22-man roster, and the 7 international players had all played from high school at some level.
They grew up with it, yeah.
Yeah. So we started helping coach at high schools around MTSU, and that was fun, man. I enjoyed coaching little kids and high school players who had played football and had an interest in rugby. It was fun.
I've tried to several times, and I know there's some high schools around here, but I've said it to a couple private high schools. Man, rugby is, if you've got enough students and you can spare it during the season. To me, rugby is, once you get to know it, it's the best team sport, because if you're not where you're supposed to be for your teammate, they are kind of out of luck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a total team sport.
Yeah, it's a lot of lessons for life.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say about rugby too, like I was not in a fraternity in college, but rugby was my fraternity. A lot of the guys that I played with, both at Nashville and even dating back to high school, those guys are my friends. We're lifelong friends, man. My roommate in college was from Brazil. He's back in Brazil. We talk once or twice a month. It's a fraternity, honestly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's that's why you called old boys. We're, once we played for a minute, I go to some of the games here in Chattanooga, and it feels good to go see some of the guys, and there's guys that have played way longer than I have. But if you've gone out there and put the time in for a little while, they accept you pretty good. And you're right.
Oh, yeah.
I think as we get older too, especially men, because I can only speak for men, we miss the camaraderie of locker rooms. We miss the guys, and rugby kind of filled in that for me in my 30s. And then, like you said, I've made some lifelong friends from it. Yeah. And it's that feeling of we belong somewhere together and have those memories. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's switch the gears a little bit, because I'm going to get you out of here in about the next 5-10 minutes.
By the way, I've got about 10, 15 minutes, so we can go long if you have time, if you've got,
Well, I want to talk a little bit about business, because you've been involved in Chattanooga business world for quite a while now, but you are the Chief Strategy Officer with Paladin Freight, but there's more to that name. What's the full name of the company, and is it in a transition or not right now?
Yeah, so we are in a process of rebranding. If you asked me a year ago, Clint, would I ever be in transportation logistics? I would laugh. Right. But you saw my bio. I've had stints both in private sector for the most part of my professional life. Had the opportunity to serve at the state level, and now transitioned back. And so I'm working for a transportation logistics company, Paladin Freight Solutions. We a fully tech-enabled logistics company. We're rolling out our tech platform, and in this process, we are rebranding to Truxio. Our tech platform is Truxio. And so we are rebranding to Truxio Holdings, but Paladin Freight has been our legacy company. And I am charged with helping execute our growth strategy.
Is it a brokerage? Do you have trucks? What is it? What do you do? Are you the one that takes a truckload from here to there and organize it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've learned over my last almost year with these guys, when you talk about transportation, there are different kind of categories and segments. We are a third-party logistics, meaning that we don't have any assets. The uniqueness about the company that I'm with, our technology platform helps just not one segment of the industry, which they are carriers, and then they're shippers, right? Our technology platform actually works with both. Carriers, our niche is the trucking companies with a fleet of 5 to 50. And then shippers, which is just your typical retail, manufacturing, shipping clients.
Right.
One thing that I will mention while on here, again, this is something I didn't know. The niche that we are in regards to carriers, trucking companies, the folks who've got a fleet of 5 to 50, Clint, represent 95% of the trucking industry.
Wow. It's kind of like, well, you've been in business. Most businesses, when you say business owners, most businesses in the United States are small at 15, 20, 30 employees. And so, or maybe 5. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And so our technology platform is helping the trucking companies with a fleet of 5 to 50 to better organize the way they run their business. Because they are leveraging or using our tech platform to run their business, we know where capacity is going to be, so we can predict, and we are leveraging that data to help our shipping customers. Obviously, there's a supply chain issue that's going on right now.
We're about to talk about that, my friend.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
and so
quick, I want to just say, though, that makes sense to me, because if I had 200, 300 trucks and I have a big giant company, I can afford the technology to make sure that my company's running smoothly. So if I have 9 trucks, I may not be able to afford that big platform that gets me the same amount of efficiency that the big companies have.
You have nailed it. So the bigger trucking companies, yes, they can afford it. They can do it. They can build their own technology. But the niche that we're working with, we're passionate about these guys. They represent majority. They're your mom and pops. They are right now, if they're not using our platform, they're operating off of 7 different apps.
Yeah. All right, you touched on it, and then I interrupted you. We're going to go back. There's this thing called supply chain issues right now. It's bottlenecked, and depending on who you read or listen to, it's a common in my world. I'll give you my take, and then I'm going to let you put your perspective on it. It's a combination of different little waves all hitting at the same time. You've got your workforce that's maybe been short. You don't have enough truck drivers or enough people to take things off boats and put them on trucks. You've got stuff at the rail stations. You have ships circling, waiting to drop stuff off. Trucks that may be bottlenecked, waiting to pick stuff up. And there's money lost. And so everybody has an interest to kind of not lose money. So there's this holdback. And now people are saying, I'm not going to get my couch for Christmas that I was going to give my kid, or I'm not going to get my chips for my car. That's the picture I'm painting. What's your perspective on the supply chain? And it is as bad as we think it is.
Yes, it is. And you are.
That's not the answer I wanted, Hodgen.
You are. I will be honest. So I obviously not been in the industry long, but I'm in it. I wake up every morning thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it as we're helping grow our company. But okay, so before this, what we call the supply chain issue or the strains around supply chain, the 2 issues that I believe you touched on that were issues pre what we're experiencing was, number 1, driver shortages, right? Trucking companies not being able to retain their drivers. They move here, and that labor issue had been there for a while. So that was an issue. The second issue was capacity. And when I say capacity is, Clint, if you have got 2 or 3 trucks, you have a shipper, you move freight from Dallas to California or to San Francisco, your truck is coming back empty, right? We saw a lot of, that's one example of inefficiencies in the industry.
Right.
And so that's one of our things. That's one of the things that our tech platform, which was launched back in December, but because of COVID, we slowed down the growth there. But that was one thing that we're trying to address, is capacity issues. Now, during the COVID year, what happens? So much uncertainty, people go home. And what did we start seeing? A lot of people ordering online.
Demand goes up. Yeah.
Demand goes up. And so that put immense strain onto the industry. So we saw demand going up, shipping demand, manufacturers obviously could not keep up with that demand, and we're still seeing that. I was at a kind of a thought leader event about a month ago, and folks who've been in the industry longer than I have, the experts, predicted that this could go on through the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Because of just the backlog that we're seeing. And then, of course, we're going into a holiday season, right? And so that pressure, that strain in the supply chain industry is going to continue. And then, of course, it's going to take a while to kind of flatten. We still do not know what 2022 will be like during a COVID year, right? Are people going to continue staying home? What's that demand going to look like? So there's a lot of uncertainty, but you
also have politics. I hate to say this, and we're not going to go politics, but we live in a world now to where politics has invaded our sports, it's invaded our schools, our churches. Politics is so much a part of it, and unless we can understand that administrations, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, they do affect whatever things they put in place affect things. And what bothers me about that is we get so used to talking to each other in hateful ways. I've got a label. Instead of talking about solutions and policies, we're just so stuck on talking mean to people because we disagree. And I'm like, you realize you can call somebody all the names you want. That doesn't fix a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, there's not a solution in that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And of course, in the topic that we're talking, if you just watch the national news, now you're starting to see politics in supply chain. And honestly, it's going to be interesting to see here the next couple of weeks actually where that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether, is there a solution from a kind of a political perspective? But should be interesting.
I just want Christmas. You know what's funny? I heard a podcast today, and I'm going to get these numbers wrong. I listened to it yesterday, and it said this guy used to be in charge of Toyota of North America. He was the CEO of it for 6 years. Before that, he was in charge of their national sales team or international sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in Long Beach right now, off the coast, just the Long Beach docking area, there's like 500 and something thousand containers waiting to be offshored, right?
Yeah.
And that one shipping area can only take in, they're only doing 18,000 containers a day, and there's 26,000 coming in already. And to your point, he's saying unless we come up with a strategy, the backlog just to keep up with it is like use 18 months.
Yeah.
That's not good. I want my couch before 18 months, dude.
I know.
You need to figure this stuff out, man.
We're working on it. It'll take a while, but it's also one of those things that one of those aha moments, Clint, that it's amazing what the impact of logistics is in our daily lives and also our economy.
Well, he had mentioned this, and you can speak to it, and then I do have to roll in about 3 or 4 minutes, but he said right now, over the last 2 or 3 decades, we've gotten into basically the lean manufacturing. In other words, if I need a part, I don't want that part to get there till right when I need it. I don't want to warehouse it anywhere. He said, well, because we've done that, nobody wanted to spend money on warehousing. Now we don't have any supply. So if there is a kink in the chain, we're kind of screwed down line from that.
Yeah.
And so he's thinking kind of like you, from this bad moment, there's probably going to be some really good that people, entrepreneurs, business thinkers like you and your team, will pull some solutions to avoid this in the future.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I will just add, I know you have to roll off. You will also start seeing retailers start getting involved from acquisition or equity, having an equity stake in transportation logistics companies.
Really? Like, give me an example. Like you're talking about Walmart, but they're already in it, right?
They're already in it, but American Eagle.
Oh.
Yeah. So after you get off, just Google American Eagle. Oh, I can send you the article that I read a couple of days ago. They've acquired a big stake in a logistics company.
Yeah. Well,
and that's one way that they're saying, you know what, I've been relying on the industry. Well, I'm going to get into the industry and have some sort of control.
Yeah. Have a voice at the table of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Listen, man, one of these days when Chattanooga has their next season, maybe we can meet out there and kind of watch a game and meet each other in person again.
Would love to, man, and maybe try and maybe do an all boys game. I have no idea, but we'll see.
Listen, I'm good for about 7 minutes. I can hit hard maybe 2 or 3 times, and then I'm going to go take the ice bath to the sidelines. I would love to play one more old boys game and just leave the cleats on the field because I quit when I was hurt too. So I had torn my MCL a little bit, and so I didn't get to quit on my terms, which kind of sucked, but that's part of it.
So, question for you: how long have you had this show?
Oh, I've been doing During the Break podcast for about 3.5 years. I used to have a radio show for 8 years called Marketing Mix, but I've been doing this podcast for about 3.5 years. And then I've got another podcast with the guy that started Rock Creek Outfitters, Dawson Wheeler. He and I do one about outdoor stuff for the last 1.5 years. So I've been doing podcasts for a while.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man. I love doing it.
Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it.
Maybe we can slow down and pick one topic and get you back on in a couple weeks and spend some time diving deep on something.
Would love to.
All right, buddy. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it, man.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. You have a great day. Bye, everybody.